how the Jujutsu Kaisen world would change if Amane and Riko did not die and Gojo and Geto went rogue. If you haven't seen part 1 of this video, check it out here or in the comment section below. Today's idea comes from Orochi Slayer, who doesn't want Megumin to get off screen like that. And frankly, I feel you. When we left our outliers, all hope was lost. Megumin sacrificed himself to keep Riko alive. Kenjaku sealed Gojo in the prison realm, and Toji picked up Megumin's body. After Gojo gets sealed and Nanami disappears, the situation gets so worse that it could shake the whole Jujutsu world. Toji, having built more hatred for Kenjaku and sadness for the losses, picked up his lifeless son's body and went into the shadows. Every single step that Toji took was bringing another memory, and he seemed to have matured with the loss that he just experienced. He also remembers a time when the Zenin clan discarded him for lacking cursed energy, and this would be the perfect character development he could have. After picking Megumin's body, he goes to the Zenin family cemetery, which is a place he never thought he would return, but he did because that is his true roots. He puts Megumin on a patch of soft grass and looks at his son's body. However, as soon as he goes to touch his son for the final last moment, he senses something nearby, a curse that is drawn by the blood of Megumin. His hand instinctively moved to his weapon, but as the shimmer took shape, he realized what he was seeing. This time, it was a death god himself, and it manifested into a round deer. This was Megumin's healing Shikigami, who stood beside the master's body. But then, a miracle happened. The deer completely healed Megumin as if nothing was wrong. The huge stabbing wound on his chest closed up, and Megumin would ultimately wake up. The father and son would have a beautiful moment together. No deep talks, no nothing, just sitting on the grass till the sun goes up. They leave the scene and go somewhere. Now, the rogue heroes go back to the hidden base, and everyone is stunned to see what the hell actually happened. Geto is still pondering over the fact that there was so much skill difference between him and the ops. But in Riko's mind, the same moment was playing again and again, only thinking about where Gojo might be and how much agony her savior actually went through. Geto hadn't moved from the center of the room in hours. He sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by the remains of his cursed spirits. His head bowed in what looked like meditation but felt more like mourning. He looks completely broken with his eyes open and guilt that might eat him away. We have to get him back, Riko said for the 100th time. There has to be a way. However, Geto replies, "You don't know the power of prison realm. Even the strongest cursed spirits who are locked in it never actually got freed. That's the fate the victim has to face." But since Riko would still be connected to Master Tengen, she would use her inner powers to see if there's even a pit of Gojo's cursed energy. Focusing for a lot of time, she found it. The prison realm was another barrier. That was her whole thing, but that was about all she could do, nothing else. "He's still alive," she whispered, as she cried, and Riko would tell Geto that he is still fighting the curse that he's placed under. However, Geto was quite a realistic fella, and he would ultimately stop what he was going to say. But Riko wouldn't give up either. She would tell Geto that if they were to stop now, that would mean that countless deaths of their allies would mean nothing. Gojo would stay trapped, Megumin would die for nothing, and Nanami, well, that's a whole new level of pain they experienced. So, for the next few days, they spent a lot of time gathering any resource they could. They even snuck into Jujutsu Society's archives to get forbidden techniques documented by all the rogue sorceresses. This is a time when Riko barely slept, pushing her connection to Tengen to its limits as she searched for any information about the prison realm's construction. However, things would change when Yuki, the special grade sorcerer, came into their base. At first, both Geto and Riko would be ready to fight Yuki, but in an instant, she would humble them down, knocking both of them out. However, after both rogue sorcerers would wake up, Yuki would put a list of scrolls on the table for them. Then, she would explain that there are actually two sides of the prison realms. On the front side, Gojo is sealed, and on the back side, there's an empty shell. The empty shell is also a key that can interact with the front side. In the main timeline, Tengen obtained the back side of the prison realm from Kenjaku, who discarded it after sealing Gojo. In this timeline, to unseal Gojo, all they have to do is bring the back gate into contact with the front gate. Pretty simple, right? Not at all. They have no leads. We need allies, Geto realized. A lot of them. They needed raw power, the kind that could match special grade curses and ancient techniques they were about to go up against. The matchup seems insane now, and there are many different challenges about entering the Jujutsu world. In this timeline, without Gojo at Tokyo Jujutsu High, Yuji Itadori's fate would be tragic. The incident at Tsukizawa 3rd High School did not happen exactly as we know it. Yuji had been curious about the finger, drawn to its obvious power, even though he couldn't see cursed spirits clearly. The occult club president, eager to impress their new athletic recruit, had suggested he take it home to study, just for the night, they'd said. While Yuji was at school the next day, attending classes and trying to decide whether to quit the track team, curses began gathering around his house. At first, the low-grade spirits appeared, but by sunset, Yuji's home was full of monsters surrounding it. Low-grade spirits at first, drawn by the finger's residual energy, but their presence attracted stronger ones. By the time the sun set, his modest home had become a beacon taken for every curse within the 50-mile radius. Yuji returned to find his front door hanging off its hinges. The living room was destroyed, furniture overturned and claw marks scored deep into the walls. He called out for his grandfather, his voice echoing through the empty house. He found his grandpa completely dead. Just looking at the scene, Yuji collapses and says sorry to his grandpa. Then, Kenjaku suddenly appears as says, "Such a tragedy." His voice carried just the right note of shared grief. An innocent man, killed by forces beyond his comprehension, but it doesn't have to end this way. Yuji looked up through his tears, seeing what appeared to be a concerned adult in a business suit. Kenjaku then explains to Yuji the whole situation, which he had no idea about. He explains that the finger has immense power and can be swallowed to either protect or destroy the world. In his grief and desperation, clouded by rage and the need for revenge, Yuji swallowed Sukuna's finger without hesitation. The transformation happened and Sukuna appeared. However, Sukuna himself paused, shocked at what he found. This boy's pain was exquisite. The guilt, the rage, the desperate need to protect others. This kind of suffering turned Sukuna on to the point where his return seemed even more exciting. Now, people from the Jujutsu world came and they saw Yuji standing in front of his home while Sukuna's energy was coming out of his body. They took the weakened Sukuna into a vehicle and Yuji's execution was about to happen. That's when Sukuna made his first move. But suddenly, Sukuna came back and things went south. He suddenly destroyed the whole vehicle and left. All the sorcerers that were at duty died. Days after his revival, Megumi finally opened his eyes and this time, he was in an unfamiliar place. He looks at a strange figure and asks, "Who is he?" Toji would reply, "I am the person who brought you into this world." After that, he leaves the scene. Megumi would try his best to wake up, but by the time he could make sense of anything, he wouldn't find Toji around anymore. When he finally made it back to the base, the reunion was overwhelming. Geto dropped to his knees the moment he saw Megumi walk through the door, hugging him as he might disappear again. Riko burst into tears, her carefully maintained composure finally cracking from relief. How? Both would only manage to say this, but even Megumi was surprised at how exactly he survived. Geto would be suspicious at first, thinking maybe Kenjaku possessed him too, but everything would seem normal. "I remember everything," Megumi would say quietly. Riko quickly placed a hand on his shoulder as she reassured him that it would be fine. First, he needed to fully recover. Elsewhere, we would see a lot of panic in the Jujutsu world because the society is now aware that the most powerful cursed spirit of them all, Sukuna, has finally returned and it's only a matter of time before he goes for the other fingers. The higher-ups had reached out to the outliers a few weeks before, requesting their help to take down Sukuna and Kenjaku. They tracked down the vessel to his hometown, relying on pinging locations where Sukuna's cursed energy had appeared. They found him in an abandoned warehouse, exhausted. Yuji's first instinct was to run. "Wait!" Riko called out. "We are not here to hurt you. We want to help." Something in her tone stopped him. Maybe it was the warmth or the fact that she was a vessel to Tengen as well. "Help with what?" he asked cautiously. "With saving someone important," Megumi said. And he even said that they want to fight the bad guys and they need to save this certain individual. They explained what Sukuna is to him as they researched and knew that they are tracking Sukuna's vessel. The eye-opener was when he explained how he got the power. A man with a stitch on his forehead. Yuji's rage intensified as he broke down in tears. His grandfather died because of him. Yuji started panicking and cried as he somehow managed to get himself back together. Megumi watched him with interest, but he knew that everything wrong was going to happen soon. Anime lover boy here, mid-editing. I just wanted to pause the video and ask you to subscribe if you like this kind of video. And while you're down there, why not leave a like as well? For the next 3 weeks, everyone started training carefully, especially Itadori, who had lots to learn. Everyone knew that Kenjaku was ancient, smart, and dirty, but Yugi and Megumi went at it with full force. Since this time Kenjaku won't fall for their old trick, they would need to do something new and go at it with higher coordination than ever before. Yugi would be in charge of all the intelligence gathering and the brains of the group. She would be tracking Kenjaku's movements and patterns, trying to make sense of his plans. But as she would be doing her research, Yuki would find that Kenjaku has taken his residence in an abandoned building in the financial district. It would be quite interesting since he has taken a place that was very much Naname's day-to-day place. While Toji is nowhere to be found, our heroes would study the building's blueprints, understanding that there are multiple entry points and escape routes. So, if something goes wrong, they have the choice to run away. However, this time, they will need to face a lot of modified humans that Kenjaku had mysteriously been creating. According to Megumi, they would fight Kenjaku and his goons from all directions without stopping, freeing Naname and getting away from the situation. Riko would use her barrier techniques to seal off the building, creating a three-dimensional maze that would limit Kenjaku's ability to escape or call for reinforcements. Yuji and Megumi would attack from different floors, and lastly, Geto would provide heavy support with his cursed spirits, overwhelming any defenses. Yuki would coordinate from outside, using her knowledge of ancient techniques to counter any surprises. Sounds like a perfect plan so far. Now, the only thing they would need is to execute the plan. Now it will dawn when our heroes decide to execute the plan. plan. The first thing they would do is try to create a barrier that would prevent any escape. This would be the ride or die type of moment. As soon as Riko puts up the barrier, Kenjaku would immediately sense the assault. Yuji goes into the building, bursting through a window on the 3rd floor, and thanks to his overwhelming strength, he would come straight to Kenjaku himself. Yuji would go straight at Kenjaku, trying to hit him with the strongest punch, but his attack would easily be deflected with Naname's technique. The 7-to-3 ratio would find the weak point in Yuji's attack and redirect the force. But instead of the frustrated growl of a missed attack, Yuji landed gracefully, his positioning perfect for what came next. That's where Kenjaku would get serious and use his cursed energy in a single chop on Yuji's neck, immobilizing him. This surprised everyone, especially Yuji, who would lose consciousness for a bit. As soon as Kenjaku would go near Yuji to steal him away, Toji would come out of the shadows. Yuji would wake up, wondering what exactly is happening. "Now would be good," Yuji called out, his voice carrying none of the righteous anger that had driven him for weeks. The shadows began to move. There would be 3 shadows coming from the darkness with an aura that everyone would be scared of. Enter Chozo, Izu, and Kichizu. Megumi would be scared and suddenly realize that these are the Death Womb paintings. But suddenly, Yuji would walk towards the Death Womb paintings, and that would surprise Megumi and Toji. Yuji turned to face his former allies, and when he smiled, it was with the cold satisfaction of a perfectly executed deception. "Sorry about this, but I've got a family to think about." He gestured towards the 3 cursed spirits. "Right, brothers?" He would then reveal that Kenjaku, beforehand, was possessing his mother's body, and then he shifted towards Naname. Chozo's expression softened with genuine affection as he looked at Yuji. "Welcome home, little brother." This betrayal would be shocking for all heroes. Geto's cursed spirits faltered for a moment as the sorcerer processed what he was seeing. Yuji would then tell everyone that he and Kenjaku planned this all together, and it was an interesting scene. Everyone getting attached to him in such a small time. The fact that Yuji wasn't really a victim, but someone who was manipulating our heroes was even more shocking. Kenjaku then tells our heroes that he has been feeding Itadori more and more fingers, making him stronger than ever. That's where Yuji's cursed energy would spike, and markings would appear across his skin, making him turn into Sukuna with 7 fingers powers. Suddenly, Yuki would come out and say, "Changing plans!" She said that Yuki and Geto would take care of the Death Womb paintings, and that Toji and Megumi would take care of Kenjaku and Yuji. Suddenly, the building explodes, and the showdown begins. Chozo then starts the first attack using his blood manipulation technique. By creating spears of hardened blood, he shot it towards Yuki, but Yuki easily destroyed them by increasing the mass of her body at an exponential rate. This shocked Chozo because he realized what kind of fight he was going to take on. Then, Geto did the counterattack with his cursed spirits that took over the enemies from all directions, forcing them to split and run away from the scene. However, Izo used his decomposition technique that destroyed the 2 spirits, but 3 more came into their place. Chozo then upped the ante and used flowing red scale with his blood flow increasing to a massive level. Now, he and Yuki are on the same wavelength while Geto is fighting the other 2 brothers. Kichizu would keep using his techniques to change Geto's position, forcing him to not help Yuki. Yuki would use Star Rage that would hit Iso's shoulder, forcing him to crash into a concrete pillar, but at the very end, Chozo would save him by providing a protective shell around his brother. At the same time, Chozo would also launch a counterattack. Then, Yuki would use Supernova, a technique that would make her the queen of gravity, and then she would attack all 3 brothers, resulting in fatal injuries. The death painting wombs would get scared and run away for their lives. Yuki and Geto would be safe, and they would try to return to the battlefield where Toji and Kenjaku are. As Yuki and Geto are moving towards the battlefield, they will be greeted by a lot of cursed humans and 3 mysterious figures. Meanwhile, the sorcerer killer was keeping Kenjaku at bay. Using the heavenly restriction, he moved around, free of cursed energy detection. Then, Toji would also use the inverted spear of heaven, nullifying Naname's ratio technique as Toji would strike him from weird angles. Kenjaku activated gravity manipulation to redirect Toji's momentum, then switched to a cursed technique reversal to turn things around. However, this time, Toji wasn't playing around. He already saw lots of death and sadness around him, which is why he used a soul split katana that went right through Kenjaku's high guard, destroying his spiritual core. The ancient sorcerer then tried killing Toji with multiple techniques simultaneously. Gravity manipulation pinning Toji's feet while curse reversal amplified the binding force. But Toji had fought curse users for decades. He used the soul split katana's unique properties to sever the spiritual connection of Kenjaku's technique. Toji looked over to where Megumi was, still worried about the boy, but he could do this. For Megumi, things were personal this time. He trusted Yuji for who he was and treated him like a brother, only to get betrayed. He pulled out his Shikigami, ready to attack Yuji. Divine dogs, totality! We see a huge wolf running towards Yuji. However, Yuji fights it head on by using his cursed energy enhanced punch, pushing the wolf away and sending shockwaves through the building. Yuji's fighting style had evolved dramatically. In this timeline, he fought with the precision of someone who had been training under a master. His cursed energy flowed more efficiently, and his black flash technique was more reliable. Megumi charged charged at him, as Yuji deflected a strike from Nue while dodging the Divine Dog's follow-up attack. Pretty slick for a beginner. Megumi then summoned white Shikigami rabbits that took over Yuji from every direction. However, he simply used the Divergent Fist to win that battle. Despite Yuji's enhanced abilities and months of secret training, Megumi used an advanced version of his technique. He used a shadow clone that distracted Yuji long enough to subdue him. "It's over," Megumi said, breathing heavily. The tides were turning. Elsewhere, the three death paintings were running for their lives, but they entered a mysterious figure with an aura so heavy that it made everyone panic. Enter Yuta Okutsu, the guy with a tragic past. As soon as the injured brothers were running, Yuta used the authentic mutual love, trapping the three death paintings in, killing each one of them. He then starts feeling that something is off and runs to where Yuki and Geto are. Meanwhile, the sorcerer killer was living up to his reputation. Kenjaku's stolen techniques were impressive, but they couldn't compensate for the mismatch in physical capabilities. Toji moved faster than cursed energy could track and hit harder than most techniques could defend against. Moreover, his weapons were also crazy. He closed the distance in milliseconds for one final attack. Just when victory seemed assured, Kenjaku's eyes met Yuji's across the battlefield. A subtle nod passed between them, the signal they planned for months. Suddenly, Yuji pulls out all the remaining fingers out of his pocket, eating them one by one, putting Sukuna into the battlefield. As soon as Yuki and Geto destroyed all the transfigured humans, we see three cursed spirits coming out from the shadows. They are Haname, Jogo, and Mahito. Mahito explains how the transfigured humans are a part of his plan, and the three fight together. Firstly, Jogo comes to the battlefield and instantly uses his domain expansion, Coffin of the Iron Mountain. This creates a fiery landscape of nothing, but as soon as he's about to attack our heroes, suddenly, his head is cut off. This was the work of Yuta, and it only made Yuki and Geto happier. Now, it's 2v3, but as soon as they are about to fight, they sense Sukuna's rampage going around. So, our heroes decide to go help Megumi, who might be suffering the most. Now, Haname is in charge of killing Yuki while Yuta faces Mahito head-on. Haname summons massive tree roots to kill Yuki, but as soon as it's about to hit her, Yuki stumps on the ground and destroys everything in a 200-meter radius. To his surprise, Haname is also pushed to the ground. Their fight goes on for around half an hour where Haname is trying to hit Yuki, but doesn't go his way. Finally, Haname using the Shining Sea of growing branches, the domain expansion, all in order to enhance the solar attacks. However, Yuki uses Black Hole Bombardment, which is a gravity orb that absorbs everything, ultimately sucking Haname in, making him disappear. For all these hours of fighting, Yuki suddenly gets mouth bleeding and passes away. Yuta is fighting his own battle with Mahito, who sees an ideal opportunity to kill both of them since Yuki is still passed out. He summons 100 mutated humans from the barriers that he has hidden, but with a single slash, Yuta purifies all of them while crying. After being completely overpowered by Yuta's perfect sword fighting, Mahito opens the self-embodiment of perfection, trying to expose Yuta's soul. Then, he goes on to touch Yuta to modify his soul, but suddenly, Rika bites down on Mahito, holding him in his place. There, Yuta then finishes Mahito with a soul-forged blade, ultimately exorcising him. The villain dies permanently. But the craziness does not stop there, because on Megumin's end, the chaos has just begun. Finally, a voice that wasn't entirely Yuji's said. We see him transforming instantly into Sukuna. Everyone freezes as Sukuna comes out. Sukuna lazily scans them as he eventually stops a little too long on each of them. Ryumen Sukuna. He announced his name. The change in battlefield dynamics was instant and devastating. Sukuna yawned as if he was bored before unleashing his cleave technique that cuts through Megumi's Shikigami like paper. Divine Dogs, Nue, even the Shadow Clone, all dispelled in seconds. Megumi barely managed to dodge as dismantle techniques filled the air around him. Toji's head snapped towards his son's desperate situation. For a heartbeat, the sorcerer killer hesitated between his current opponent and protecting Megumi. Kenjaku seized the opportunity. Curse technique, gravity manipulation, maximum output! The gravitational field pinned Toji in place and began crushing him. Even his superhuman durability had limits, and those limits were being tested. Now, Yuta also joins the battle along with Geto. However, as soon as they tried to attack Sukuna, they were fiddled around like little children. The difference between their strengths was too much. Domain expansion, malevolent shrine. Invisible slashes filled every inch of space within a 200-meter radius. Megumi froze as thousands of cutting techniques aimed at his position. That's when Toji moved. Toji threw himself between Sukuna and his son. The inverted spear of heaven and soul split katana moved in perfect harmony. However, he still caught a lot of damage, ultimately collapsing while protecting Megumi. With Sukuna at full power, the remaining heroes find themselves in an impossible situation. Megumi, seeing the hopelessness of the situation, puts his hands up for the ritual. With this sacred treasure, I summon. He began to summon Madaraga. I don't think so, Sukuna said, and he instantly hit Megumi in the back of his head, making him pass out. Kenjaku approached Sukuna with his evil smile. Perfect. Just as planned. What do you want with him? Geto demanded, wounded and barely able to stand. He used his remaining cursed spirits to form a protective circle around Yuki and himself. The same thing I've always wanted, Kenjaku replied. Evolution. Sukuna lifts Megumi and thinks he will be an interesting lab experiment for them. The situation was hopeless. Geto and Yuta were exhausted from the previous battles, facing two opponents who vastly outclassed them, but that's where things were going to take a huge turn. You see, Riko spent the entire battle navigating the building thanks to the connection she had with Tengen. Thanks to her unique understanding of being the star plasma vessel, she understood how barriers worked, and now she was ready to give it her all to lift it. She found the grotesque cube hidden in a reinforced vault 3 floors below ground level. The moment her fingers touched its surface, she felt Gojo's presence. She pressed the back gate against the base. The prison realm began to crack and split. Intense cursed energy leaked out in waves. 3 floors above, Kenjaku's head snapped, wondering what the hell was happening. And then the person everyone wanted appeared. Gojo Satoru stepped out of the crumbling prison realm, his blindfold already removed, his 6 eyes blazing with infinite cursed energy. But something was different about him. The time of imprisonment made him the best version of himself. In a split second, he was face to face with Kenjaku and Sukuna. Yuki also joined the battlefield. Although she was also weakened, Geto and Yuta looked relieved as they saw Gojo. Real men Sukuna, Gojo said, his casual tone. Sukuna looked concerned, and Kenjaku seemed ready to move. The building continued to collapse around them from the sheer weight of Gojo's arrival, but none of them moved. Can Gojo handle both Sukuna and Kenjaku at full power? And how many trump cards does Kenjaku actually have? Should we make a part 3 to see this epic confrontation play out? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to smash that like button if you want to see how this battle ends. Subscribe for more what if scenarios. Until next time.